way it is, my first move would be to identify the b value. All right, so that 30, I'm going to take that and divide it by 2 and square it. All right, so again, that 30 is the b value. I mean, whether you refer to it as the b value or not, it really doesn't matter as long as you know which coefficient you're going after. All right, it's the one that's attached to the variable that doesn't have an exponent associated with it. All right. So then we're going to divide that by the leading coefficient of 3, and we'll get that result. But at the same time, or first or after, it doesn't matter. You can do pretty much, I don't want to say all of these steps, but a fair few of these steps in any order that you want. That 27 also has to go to the other side. All right? We want any loose constants to be over on the right-hand side of the equation. So you can do that on the fly, or you can do it immediately. It's really up to you. All right? That's one of the things that you want to consider in terms of assessing your own strengths and weaknesses, because if you decide, well, that's something I could do in my head, then you're saving yourself a line of work. Right? But if you're the kind of person that needs to write every single thing out in order to have that logical flow, then that's something you want to do also, right? But either way, we should end up with 3c squared plus 30c. Then we're going to have some number that gets plugged into that gap is equal to 33 plus that same number, all right? So 30 divided by 2 is what?
15.
15 squared is what?
225.
225 divided by 3 is? 75. All right. Now, if you can do that in your head, wonderful. Obviously not a requirement because we have calculators for that. Although, that's the thing I wanted to bring up. I'm still missing 2 calculators. So you may not have calculators. One day in the near future, if those 2 calculators have not been restored to their natural habitat, you're going to come to the front of the room, you're going to open the drawer, and all you're going to see is an empty metal drawer because those calculators will not be there anymore. You'll see that cabinet in the back of the room, the one that has the padlock on it. You might wonder what's behind those doors. Well, in a few days, it'll be a set of calculators, right, that will not be accessible to you. Right? So whoever has my calculators, I want them back. Right? No questions asked, they just got to be returned. And it definitely happened in this class. Right? So I need them back. Otherwise, you're ruining it for everyone. Anyway, that 75 gets added to both sides.
I thought since you added the 27 to the 6, you didn't need to add the 75, but you do.
Yeah, whatever this computation is always going to get added in.
It's just like,
All right, this completes the square.
If it's like negative 27, adding to 6, what would it be? 33.
To get the negative 27 to the other side, you have to add 27 to both sides of the equation.
Wouldn't that now be 33?
27 plus 6?
Well, negative 27.
Well, to get rid of the negative 27 on the left, you have to add 27 to both sides.
Oh, I get it.
All right. So we're going to take out a GCF. All right. Whatever that leading coefficient is, and it doesn't always have to divide evenly into the numbers that are given. That's the thing that people get hung up on. This number here is what now is going to serve as the GCF, even if it creates fractions. So I'm going to divide each term of the trinomial by 3. So 3c squared divided by 3 is c squared. 30c divided by 3? 10c. And 75 divided by 3? 25. It's at this point you'll realize that you're doing everything right or you made a mistake. Because if this is not a perfect square trinomial, then you made a mistake.
So the leading coefficient is coefficient is always your GCF?
Yes.
All right.
So 33 plus 75, what does that give us?
108.
108.
Oh, yeah.
All right. The next two steps can happen interchangeably or simultaneously, however you like to do it. We have a perfect square trinomial. I know that because the first and last terms, well, I followed the process to create a perfect square trinomial, but the first and last terms are perfect squares, so I'm pretty comfortable that I didn't just botch this up. That's the whole idea. All right. So it's going to be written as a binomial squared, bringing the 3 along for the ride. Take the square root of the first term, the square root of the last term, and bring down whatever that middle sign is.
C plus 5.
C plus 5. All right. So there's that. Now, the next step, like I said, it could happen simultaneously with the previous step because we have to divide out the 3. Just to make it look a little nicer, what I tend to do is just multiply by reciprocals. So instead of just putting this whole thing over 3, which I think doesn't look very nice, I'll multiply both sides by 1/3. On the left-hand side, the 1/3 and the 3 divide to equal 1. And you're just left with the C plus 5 squared. And what is 108 times 1/3, or same thing as 108 divided by 3? 36. All right. The whole point behind this process is to get us to this step where we have a power of 2, a binomial raised to a power of 2. If you've done this right, when you take the square root, that power of 2 should cancel away. All right. So take the square root of both sides. The radical and the power of 2 cancel, leaving you with just the C plus 5.
Equals square equals
Oh,
6.
-6 or +6.
-6 or +6, so we say plus or minus 6. All right, it's such an important part of this process, but it's such a tiny detail. All right, if you don't have that plus or minus there, you're only going to walk away with one solution when you could have as many as 2 solutions. And, tomorrow's quiz won't have multiple choice in it, but the unit test will. And when that happens,
My friend is
yeah, it happens all the time. And then in a couple seconds, it'll reconnect right on cue. So, I don't know. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. We're looking at C equals -5 plus or minus 6. All right, that's the better way of writing it. If you wrote it as plus or minus 6 minus 5, that's fine, but it's not as mathematically elegant.
Why did you take away the parentheses from the C plus 5?
Because there's nothing being added to it or subtracted from it or operated on it in any way, so they don't need to be there. Yeah, parentheses, I mean, they serve as multiplication, but they also serve as an organizational strategy. It's grouping, so if there's nothing along with that expression, then you don't need the fencing, you don't need the parentheses.
Would you not do +6 minus 5 and then -6 minus 5?
That's the next step, yeah.
Oh, you would do that?
Yeah, because the only time you would call it quits in this step is if you had a radical, let's say this is -5 plus or minus radical 6, you wouldn't be able to combine them, so you would stop. But here we actually can. So I always do the subtraction first to give me the smaller answer. And it's a -5 minus the 6 is going to be -11. And then my other possibility, -5 plus 6 is going to give me a +1. So we do them separately.
If you can do the final step straight from the step where C plus 5 equals plus minus 6, can you do that?
Yeah.
Or do you have to show all?
No, you don't have to show this. You can just get right there, yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of things here that I'm showing really for instructional purposes. A great deal of this could happen behind the scenes in your mind, right? And eventually, and you might find it hard to believe, some more than others. This step here, the completing the square, before it's all over, like your high school experience, this is all going to be happening in your head. It's so new that you're like, no, that expression will. You know, like, there's no way that's going to happen in our head, but it will, because you're going to be doing it so frequently, and it becomes kind of like muscle memory. So.
At the bottom, will you get points deducted if you don't list it in numerical order? So if you put the 1 before the -11, okay.
No. I mean, my stock answer to that is if the instructions said specifically to put it in some kind of order, then of course you'd lose credit if you didn't follow the instructions, but none of my instructions are going to say to put it. I mean, I guess anything's possible with the regions, because they are who they are, but I've never seen that before. So it should be okay. Okay.